The last agent of erosion that we want to take a look at are wind, waves, and gravity. So let's start with wind. Wind, as we know, is the air that moves across the surface of the earth, and wind is known for carrying sand and smaller sized sediments. So the feature that's often left behind by wind is what we call a sand dune. You may have seen these at the beach or if you went to the desert. And sand dunes created by wind can show us, based on their shape, the direction that the wind was blowing. So wind carries sand up the shallow side and drops it off on the steep side. So if we look at this picture here, the wind is carrying these small pieces of sand up the shallow side, and then they all get dropped off on this steep side here. So the wind direction is always up the shallow side towards the steep side. And we can see that in this diagram here, that the wind pulled the sand up the shallow side and kind of dropped it off on this steep side. So here's an example of some sand dunes. What direction was the wind blowing that created these sand dunes? Waves are another agent of erosion, and they are also going to move sand and some smaller size sediments. So here is a picture of what we call longshore current. Generally, we find that water and waves at the ocean do not come straight into the shore. They come in at kind of an angle. So in this diagram, the effective wave direction, or the general direction the waves are going, is this kind of angle to the shore. And so what happens is when the waves come in and go out and come in and go out along this kind of purple path here, they're going to pull the sand with it. So sand that started here is going to get pulled in with the wave and out with the wave, and in with the wave and out with the wave. So eventually the sand is going to drift in this direction. So this beach drift is caused by the fact that the waves are coming in at an angle. Let's look at another example of this. A lot of beaches around the world, we have created what we call groins or jetties, these man-made structures, these big, long structures that are going to block that sand from being moved along the shoreline. So in this diagram, the current or the waves are going in the opposite direction. They're kind of coming in this angle here. So they would pick sand up from here and kind of move it in this direction as the waves move. But these groins and jetties block the sand from being moved. So they show us that there's a buildup of sand on this side. So the sand is being picked up from here by the wave and moved here, and it can't get past the groin. So this shape of deposition along this side of the groin tells me that the sand was moving in this direction, and therefore the water was moving in that direction. Here's an example of a diagram of some groins and some sand movement. What direction was the longshore current or the wave direction in this diagram? Lastly, we just want to talk briefly about gravity. Gravity is that force that pulls everything down, and gravity causes erosion in the form of mudslides and landslides. So here's a picture of a hill that basically just collapsed. Gravity pulled all of this sediment and whoosh, pulled it down the hill. Here we have an example of a mudslide. Same thing. The mud builds up and whoosh, gravity pulls it downhill.